All right, it's back, episode 57. We've just been rambling off air, as we always do. But I thought we'd pick up, we chatted yesterday and we ran out of time. I thought we'd pick up on the young guy you're training for. I think he's an 800-metre runner, but you're training him over 400 at the moment to pick up his speed. I think we're also just talking about how to increase his speed endurance and so forth. We might randomly go off to some other areas. I was mentioning before, I had a great interview with a young guy in the US. He's got a master's in human performance or sports science or something to that effect. He's only 30. He's also a researcher. He's a human performance researcher. He's actually doing some research work for some other podcasters at the moment. Really good young guy, actually, but boy, oh boy, he can run. We're just talking about VO2 max. He's written a PDF or an ebook on VO2 max as well. His current VO2 max is 76, I think he said, or 80 something. He's pretty high, and he's run a 2:37 marathon, and he's about to run another one, and he's hoping to run 2:28. He's currently on target for.
Yep. No, well, that's elite.
So he's getting down there, and I think he's trying to break 15 minutes for 5Ks.
Okay, yeah. That's
So,
elite running. Yeah, that's very, very hard to do.
He's definitely a good, but he's a really good guy, a really nice guy. Lives in Texas. We're just talking about the heat as well, how he goes with the heat in the summer, and he said, it's pretty full on. So he has some good ideas. But 400-metre running. So you've got a young guy. He's an 800 runner, right? The guy you're coaching.
Yeah, he started in 8s and has moved down to 400.
So 8's down to 4s. He's only 16.
15.
What's 15? What's his PB over 800 and 400 at the moment?
4 for the 8 and 52.29 for the 4.
I think I asked you the other day, would you know what the Australian record is for under 16s for 400 at the moment?
Yeah, it's 46 something. So
is it really?
Yeah. It's not like I'm saying. It's like so you're running 52.29. You're nowhere. I mean, it's fast. I mean, he goes to a private school, and he's the fastest 400-metre runner in his school. As soon as he gets out and goes to districts, he wins districts, which is just a small handful of schools in his district. He goes up to then regionals, and he places second at regionals. He goes to states, he'll be 6th. There'll be 5 runners faster than him. And his age group.
That's pretty normal, but
he won't make a 4.
How long has he been running the 4?
6 months.
Yeah, so he's got plenty to learn, and I think the 4, as we all know, it's a couple of components going on. You've got to be able to tolerate the pain, and secondly, there's a lot of strength endurance that you need to build up in that 400 to be able to maintain, and there's a lot of learning to do. So many people, it just takes years to be able to learn to run a 400-metre right, and how often do we still see at international level the best athletes in the world still get it wrong, right?
All the time. But the other thing you deal with when you deal with kids from 12 through to 16, particularly boys, and girls it's slightly different, but boys kind of go like this. At some point from 12 to 16, they get this enormous boost in strength.
Sure.
When they mature. And, you watch one runner here on the Gold Coast, he's 15 as well. He went from 53 seconds to 47.5.
In what period?
In a year. But he grew exponential, like it was ridiculous what the growth rate he got. Now, he's a very specific example, but for every one of him, and there's only one of them, there's another 1,000 that doesn't happen.
Sure.
So the thing is, in the conversation I was having with this kid's father the other day, is he's been, when he first came to us, he was in 57 shape. He was running 57s, and he's been legging down really quickly, which you would expect because they're kids. As every day they get older, they get stronger. Unlike training, say, a 25-year-old who's already reached most of their strength gains, they're not going to grow anymore. They're not going to get any taller. None of these things are going to happen for them anymore. So with him, and some kids develop late, he's a late developer. I think he's got another leg down of about 0.4 to 0.8, which will take him to the 51.5 maybe. But then the tricky bit comes, because you could just train a kid and they're just going to get better with age. They just are. Doesn't matter what you give them. They just get better. But the trick is there's a point where they reach this point, and for him, it's going to be in the 51s. Where does the time come from? Where do we get that next leg to turn him into a 50-point run? This is where coaching gets quite nuanced, is to say, well, where are we picking this up? Is he sort of more of a, can he hold his long speed? Do we need more speed down the back straight? Do we need a combination of it? And then whatever we decide we think he needs, then you got to program to it, and then you got to test it. You program to it, test it. A lot of times it'll fail. It's a lot of trial and error. You think, well, that didn't work. He didn't react well to that. We didn't get the outcomes we were looking for. So now we're going to try this. And that's as I always say, the difference between coaching and training. Because anyone can train someone and just run them around an oval. A monkey can do that. But the trick is just to watch him race, to watch him train and go, you know what? We need to put energy here. We've only got 7 days in a week, and some of them have to be rest days. Where are we going to drive energy to get the outcome we want? And knowing that we could be wrong.
Yeah.
But everyone's physiology is slightly different. No one runs the same. No one's exactly the same. And if you look at elite runners from the top down, if you look at the 400-meter final that occurred in Paris and looked at every one of those runners, while they all ended up in virtually the same place, they would have taken very, very different roads to get there.
Sure.
And that's
Yeah, a couple of points there is that, one, I think, the luxury you have when you're that age is that you can pretty much just, bury an athlete session after session and they keep recovering.
It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, they don't need the rest as you get a little bit older, and definitely like I need now. So that's one thing. But I think secondly, yes, the growing part, you get a certain amount of speed out, and there's no doubt about that. But there is that element of once you start to train more specifically for an event under, a coach that actually has a better understanding of the process to run a better 400, it does actually accelerate that process as well, because, we all know there's so much improvement you can make, but if the coaching and the strategy is sort of all over the place and they're running either too slow or too much long volume all the time, then that can take so much longer for that kid to get there. You might find that, just once you work him out how to coach this particular person, that he may pop under the 51-second mark or even 50 seconds quite quickly.
Yes.
Yeah. Because he's, and everyone's got a ceiling. We know that there's only so much speed and so much strength endurance, and everyone's going to cap somewhere.
Yes.
But I just think it's working these people out sometimes to get them that sort of, additional speed and additional strength endurance. So, but we were chatting the other day about the strength or the mental strength of some athletes as well, and, how to train that, or you can't train that. And when you were making the story or making the case the other day, I was thinking about Jana Pittman when she used to run it. It might have been before your time at Narrabeen when she used to run under Jackie Burns.
No, I saw it.
Yeah. So back in the day, back when she was probably only 17 or 18 at Narrabeen, my God, she was just so mentally strong. Jackie Burns used to stop her training all the time. She's like, oh, can I just do one more rep? And she'd just be laying on the track. Oh, no, I'll get up and do one more. That's the difference. That's a girl that's gone on to do pretty amazing things in sport. I believe she's now a doctor, dedicated herself to study for 6 or 7 years or 10 years, whatever it was. But that's that mental capacity we were talking about. You just can't teach, right? She just had that from the get-go.
Yeah.
Because she was a good athlete. She probably wasn't the best athlete, but she was mentally so tough.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, and the thing that I wrestle with a lot as well, is that while you're trying to look at an individual and look at their strengths and weaknesses and where you want to put energy to get the most out of them, you eventually, when you get to an elite, or you want to get to not even an elite level, but just be, say, better than good, say excellent or proficient at an event, there's fundamentals that you still have to fall back on to say, well, if we don't achieve these fundamentals, you're just not going to be ever in that class. And one of the fundamentals with 400-meter running that I always eventually have to hang my hat on, although it's not the only one, because it's, again, there's other caveats I have to put on it. But as I've said to him many times, if you can't get to 200 meters in this time, and feel comfortable, the rest of the race doesn't matter. It's over. So
Yeah.
he has to, and I've said to him the other day, I said, we've got to get you around to 300 as well. You not only got to get to 224 something, you got to get to 336 something to 37 flat and still feel okay. Oh, look,
Yeah.
when you say okay, you're going to be uncomfortable. Don't misinterpret that when I say comfortable. You're going to be uncomfortable, but not as uncomfortable enough that you can't keep running. Now, that's when it gets tricky. Because even if you say, well, he's an athlete, and I'll give you a couple of examples where Elaine Thompson was a classic example of this, one of the fastest 200-meter runners in the world. When she went to run a 400, and she was fabulous to 200. She was, and she looked very comfortable. She looked a little uncomfortable at 250. At 300, it was a train wreck. And she walked home in 56 seconds.
Yeah.
After running around 23.5, which is well within her comfort zone. She's a 21.6 second 200-meter runner. So she rolls around in 23.5 comfortable. Well, what happened next was far from comfortable. And they're the nuanced parts of 400-meter running that, regardless of the athlete you have and the strengths and weaknesses, they're still fundamentals about 400-meter running. If you can't master them, you're just never going to be a competent 400-meter runner. You might be a good runner in your school. You might even make it to districts and regionals, but your career is over and you're never, ever going to run as an elite runner. And as you said, every one of us, whether you're Usain Bolt all the way down to some school kid running around in a school carnival, has a capped amount of how fast they're ever going to run.
Yeah.
Which is why everyone, if you've ever done track, will have a little sheet of paper with their personal best times on them, and they never touch them again. That's it. And that's as good as you could go. Rain, hail, or shine, that's as good as you could ever go. So, and that's, by the way, 99% of the population. And the very, very few, very, very special select people like Lettice Tebogo, Noah Lyles, Usain Bolt, Elaine Thompson, Sha'Carri Richardson, all these wonderful athletes that we love to see run, they're the special ones.
Yeah, for sure.
But you start counting them on two hands, and that's all you get. That's all, there's not many of them. So it's we sometimes get lost in the fact that when we see people improving really quickly, like this kid's done from 57 to 52, that the next leg down should look like the legs we just did. And they just don't. I'm trying to explain that, I can find thousands of kids that can run 60 seconds for 400 meters in Australia, but every second you drop, watch how the numbers just halve and halve and halve until it's next to no one.
Yeah, for sure. And even then, running 60 seconds or a 400, you speak to most people and they've probably, they've never gotten there in their entire life.
No.
And I pride myself on that. I used to go around and it used to be able to go out and just jog around 60 seconds or a 400. It'd be interesting to try and do it now. And now that I've moved into this, I don't know what space I've moved into at the moment. I call it endurance space because it's endurance space from where I've come from. I ran 11 Ks on Saturday, which is definitely endurance for me. But I know for some of the people that I've been speaking to online that if I say that I've run 11 Ks and it's endurance work, they kind of just laugh at me. It's their warm up. So they're going out in these big runs.
100%.
But it would be interesting, and I know in that space, that world, for most people to break 60 seconds is, for a 400, is the miracle mark. If you can run 60 seconds for 400 in distance runners. But I've been thinking about it recently. I'd like to go out and actually test myself to see if I still can run. I wouldn't be able to do it off the bat, but go out and do a bit of track work. I think I will start doing, just a little bit of more speed work again soon, just to keep me in touch. And just the length of my stride, I noticed at the moment with all long running I'm doing that my stride's starting to shorten up. How many days a week are these kids training?
5.
Yeah.
The world's changed. These kids, they're doing 2 to 3 strength days a week. They're doing, they've got their gym, phyos, their long work, speed. They're getting 1, sometimes 2 days off a week, but that's what parents are demanding it. The sport's demanding it. Qualification times are continuing to rise. I mean, the next world champs out of Paris, that's 10 flat for the 100.
Yeah.
That's qualifying.
How many track days would they be doing?
Still only 3 track.
Yeah.
3 track.
You don't bring, it is a lot. And it's funny because in the endurance world, most people run at least 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And some that can recover well, would run 7, but their recovery day is just for them, a slow run. You just go out and run for recovery. Interesting enough, and I've heard a lot of athletes, which I think this is going to be me, just trying to build up my endurance more. I'll start using the bike as my recovery days. There's a lot of guys out there that do just 2-hour slow bike rides, not on an indoor bike, just to keep their legs turning over. That there's a lot of talk about zone 2 running at the moment. I can't run in a zone 2 heart rate. For me personally, just my heart rate spikes too quickly, but I can sit on the bike now, which I couldn't before. I could sit on the bike forever. It's actually hard to get my heart rate out of zone 2 when I actually ride. And even one of the guys that I've met online, David Abbott, he's doing his long zone 2 work on a treadmill, walking at 10 or 12%, up to 3 hours. He walks on the treadmill.
Yeah.
At
I
a
will
rise.
say, I have noticed though, with kids, because of the requirements now, injuries have gone up.
Yeah, interesting.
More injuries are becoming more common, in all sports, by the way, because the demands on them are higher.
What type of injuries are you saying?
Heaps of foot injuries, some bone fractures, because especially 12 to 16, as their feet are growing and the injuries, we're seeing ligament damage and bone fractures.
Yeah, interesting. That the bone stuff, and I don't really have a lot to say about it, but the ligament stuff and the just tendon injuries is obviously typically an overused thing. People just need to
Yeah, it is.
progressively just load that sort of stuff and get stronger. But the bone stuff is a bit more tricky. That sometimes is you're nearly not sure why. It can just happen. Some people that appear to do all the right things still get some sort of stress type fractures and stress injuries.
Yeah.
I've been really lucky. I've only ever suffered with shin splints once in my life, and that was going back to playing Aussie rules after a 4-year break and putting football boots on, as you would well know, early in the season when the grounds are still really hard. And putting football boots on, having to play a game. I remember getting shin splints, but I've never really suffered, apart from my Achilles problem, which stopped my career in the end. But, feet injuries or stuff like that, I've always been pretty robust. Anthony has a horrible foot injury at the moment, which he can't shake. He's got plantar fasciitis or some form of plantar fascia injury, but I also think he hasn't done the work. I think his calves got so tight and that plantar fascia got so tight, and he just hasn't done the work on it to rehab it. So 3 days a week for these kids on the track. And what phase are you in at the moment? So they're going into sort of faster work, coming into the warmer weather?
Virtually in competition phase now. We've got, they've already raced districts, regionals. They're into, they do what's called all school states, and then they go to the actual state championship and then national. So they're fully in competition phase now. They're racing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So what, just as an example of that, what's a week sort of structure look like at the moment? What are your training nights for these kids at the moment?
What are
What are your training days? What days are you training? What days are they on the track?
Monday, Wednesday, Friday is their track days.
Okay. They don't do any work on the weekends, or they race on the weekends?
Race.
So do they race every weekend in some
No.
sort of local competition? No.
No, they're not racing every weekend, although there's competitions now starting almost every weekend. You pick and choose your racing. And we often will look at the weather as well, and think we're going to get a good weather day and nice tailwinds, we'll go race.
Yeah. And that week, just give me as an example for, like this 400-meter kid, has he got a specific night? Like Monday's more of his endurance night and
Monday's speed.
Speed, okay.
We're doing speed Monday, a little bit of sort of like he'll run today, he'll run 300s off almost full recovery, and they'll all be down in the 38s and 39s.
Okay,
that's all.
So for people that don't know what that actually means, what's full recovery look like for someone on a track session?
For a kid, for him, it'll be 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, what would you take as full recovery if you were doing the same session?
Flat out 300. Yeah.
But then they're not flat out for him, are they? Are they flat out?
You'd be 95%.
95, yeah. So
if I was 95%, no, I'd take 15.
Yeah, we would only. So what would you run? What's your 95% 300 as an example?
39.
39. Yeah. So yeah, we would have in the day, we would have run those probably off, I reckon, 8 minutes.
Yeah.
we wouldn't have had, if we
Oh,
needed to struggle out to 15, maybe, but typically the only 15-minute breaks we had were if we've done a session 2x3, 150, and then have a big break and then run a 39, 300 at the end. We would have 15 minutes then. But, that sort of 3x3, 300 session would probably only have 8, maybe 8, then the second session 10. And what does a speed night look like? So it's interesting for a lot of people thinking about track. Someone goes to the track and they only run for 40 seconds, 120 seconds, 160 seconds, their whole training session.
yeah.
It's like, how does it actually even work? But obviously we're at the track for a long time between your warm-ups and whatever else. But yeah, it's not a huge amount of running. But what's a typical, just a very average speed night look like on a Monday then?
Off speed. We like what we did this Monday just gone by. We just did 460s on roll in. But they were all like 6 high to 7 flat.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do a short ladder from there out to, so we'd go 100, 110, 120, 150 and call it off good recovery. That's long speed.
Yes. Okay. And
Because he's a forerunner and he's more back end, that's why he gets that. So, and we're looking at times like over 100, he's running like 12 flat or just dipping under 12. He ran like 13:03, I think, for his 110, 13:09 for 120, and then a 17:32, I think he ran for his 150.
yeah. Okay.
Good speed.
Yeah. Rolling 60s, again, for people who just don't know what that actually means, that's, starting behind the 60-meter mark and typically taking like a 5-meter roll in. So you're not taking off from the get-go. For people that aren't familiar with track, like just doing flat-out starts all the time from the actual start line, it's pretty taxing on your body, pretty hard on your hamstrings. And, if you're doing like a speed session, we often do these roll-ins for a lot of particularly for the really fast stuff. Sometimes, is he rolling in on the 110s and 120s as well?
No, by then he's off the mark.
Yeah, sure.
But you do rolling 60s, particularly early in the session, because his body and hamstrings are still warming up.
Yeah, sure.
And it just helps eliminate injury. Like if you had him off the mark in 60s, right after warm up, it's the risk factor goes up. So you roll him in, get him really nice and warmed up, and when you get out over longer sprints, say 110 through to 150, because I know the type of athlete he is, he's not going to go out like it's a 60-meter sprint.
Sure.
He goes out hard, but it's not the same as if he was 60 meters in blocks and blasting out where injuries can occur. So he's pushing out hard, but not enough to load his body in a way that he's going to get injured.
Yeah, and what's interesting about doing work like that, for a 400-meter runner, typically we wouldn't do a lot of block work. I mean, I obviously understand when you're at elite level, they're probably doing still, a substantial amount of speed work, but as a sort of middle of the road or a Masters 400-meter runner, we wouldn't do a ton of absolute speed work like 60s and so forth, but
Almost
you still need, say that again?
Almost none. We do a little bit, but my speed, because I got back end speed, because I can hold my top end, all comes from like 100 through to 150 work.
Sure. And I completely agree with that. I mean, obviously, you still have to take off in a 400. You still need to be able to get up to speed and get into your running sort of rhythm. Interesting enough, I was going to say that running those few more aggressive or higher intensity 60s at the start of a session, like a 110, 120, 150 session, or 3 150s, or 2x3 150s, it primes your longer runs really well.
It does.
So I would sort of say to anyone, if you do some sort of track work, go out and run 2 sets of 3 150s without doing the prime 60s and see how your 150s are. And you'll quickly find that by doing those, let's call it a primer 60 quite aggressively, how much easier you get up to speed in your 150s, right?
Totally.
It just feels like a breeze, and it makes a massive difference doing something like that first.
It does. Yes, it does.
So we used, when we ran, and it was a model that it's been around for a long time, but I adopted just to us because I thought it was a better model for our squad, was more concurrent training because, a lot of people go from very long work in the preseason and they progressively get shorter and shorter and introduce more speed as the season goes. I found with us that I didn't want to get away from that speed, so we always brought the speed in or kept the speed in very early. We'd still have a model where we do longer work in our base work earlier on, but we'd always do some speed to keep that in the program for that exact reason. So one, the injuries hopefully don't come because you're just not introducing speed too quickly, and you've already got the speed for your longer work. You're not struggling to run a 42-second 300 early in the season because you've already got that push out and can get up to speed quite quickly.
Yeah.
Anyone that's done a lot of base or a very big slow base as a 400 meter runner will know then all of a sudden you try and turn out a quicker, 200 or 250, it's very hard to get up to speed.
Yeah.
It just, you're like, oh, I've been doing this long laboring work off short rest. Your legs are quite heavy and you've got no push. Yeah, we adopted that concurrent system, which I really thought worked for our squad, to be honest.
Yeah.
And what do your Fridays look like?
Fridays becomes then a little bit more of a hybrid version of the first 2 days. So then we go out to a little bit more top end speed maintenance over like anywhere between 150 and 250.
Mm-hmm.
So we would have some runs and we would progressively build speed. Like sometimes we'll do, if we ladder from 150 up to 250 and back, and then we look at the 100 splits and we incrementally, like if we're coming down from 250 to 200 or even then run a 220 and then a 180, we look at the 100 splits to be getting quicker as the distance comes down. So we'll do something like a progressive ladder like that and just keep, like, if he's say, over 250, let's say he's running like, 1285 or 1295 splits in 250, well, we want that to be 1265 over say 220. We want 1225 to 12.5 over 200, and then can incrementally increase the 100 split times.
Yeah, makes sense.
Just to build his long end. Basically, the bottom line is, if you want to get to the pointy end of 400s, you need speed and you need the ability to hold it for as long as you can.
Yeah, 100%.
They're the two fundamental sort of proficiencies that you need to build inside a 400 meter run.
Yeah, and as we've said many times, there's a million ways to skin the cat.
There are.
And, I always kind of thought that you can, obviously I've got a particular way of coaching, you've adopted a particular way of coaching, and it's not perfect for every person. And in some situations, it might get somebody so far, then they're better off actually using someone else's methodology because they'll adapt better to their coaching method, right, or their principles. What we should do, and we obviously record these in audio, but we can also do a video podcast. We might bring up just maybe a 6-week training block, one of your programs next time, and we'll put it on screen and we'll do a video podcast that I'll record, and we'll just go through it just to give people an understanding of what 6 weeks of, a 400 meter training block looks like. And I'm thinking lots of things here, obviously, for anyone that listens that's, a sprinter and wants just to understand the methodologies behind sprinting, but also the adoption to some distance runners. And I've had a few people hit me up on Twitter, which is now X, about what they should do to improve their 400 meter times. They're doing 800 meter intervals on the track and they want to get fast. And as we all know, the way you improve your speed, you got to run faster. And sometimes that's from the bottom up, start getting your hundreds a bit quicker and let that out over 200. So I'm just interested in how we apply even some of these 400 meter sessions to that middle distance guy. And they can definitely use 150s, 200s and 300 repeats, which most of these guys don't go down to, by the way, as you well know. Particularly road guys that are going to the track to doing their, most road athletes or, 10K runners and marathon runners go to the track one day a week and do their intervals because it's measured. It's very interesting listening to all the guys in the US. They all talk about how many miles they run every day. They all talk about what their mile pace is. But when they go to the track, it's always 800 meter intervals or 1200 meter intervals. as soon as they jump a bit higher, then they talk about 1 mile intervals. It's very funny just listening to them. I wish they get on the same page. But yeah, so we might go through next time through just a 6-week block and how some of that can be applicable to not only sprinters, but also some of these guys that are trying to improve their speed over their 800s to improve their mile speed and so forth. And as I said, there's a million ways to skin the cat. We were talking about one of the sessions the other day, and we might break this down as well, about the 50-100 split we used to do many years ago, where we'd run a 50 quite hard, 50 meters on the track quite hard, take off quite aggressively, and then take a time at the 50-meter mark, roll through to the 100, basically just, you take your foot off the gas, but you keep running so you get to the 100. We have a minute rest. We turn around on the 100 line and we run 100 meters back to the other end of the track. And then we take our minute rest then and do a 50 again. Extremely good session. And I would say that session is probably applicable to nearly any type of runner. You just adjust the speed, right? But if you're running even 4s, 8s, or, 3,000 meters, to do a session like that, because if you increase that, what did we used to do? 2 sets of 5?
No, 10 straight.
Okay, 10 straight. So 1,500 meters of track, which again is a lot of volume for a track runner.
Yeah, a lot of volume.
Track sprinter.
At that
we
speed.
made a big track day at that speed, 100%. A big track day, for a 400 meter runner, you might get out to 2,000 meters, pretty rare. But that's a lot of volume for a track runner. And I would challenge a middle distance guy or even a longer distance guy that they just have to add to that. They could just do, set of 12, set of 14, right up to a set of 20. But I would nearly say that everyone's still going to be fatigued after that session if you add enough volume to it.
But interestingly, and what matters here is what adaptation you're looking for. And the question I'd always ask before you put a session to anyone, if they want to be a better 400 meter runner, is do I have a runner who's got back end and endurance and is coming down from 8s and 15s, or do I have a speed runner, 200 meter runner going up? Because if I take, say, an 800 meter coming down and give him that 50-100 session and give him what I think the speed should be, he'd get no adaptation out of it at all. He'll just fail it.
Sure.
And if I give the 200 meter runner coming up and add too much volume to it, he's going to fail that. And you won't get the adaptation. So the trick is, and I know for me personally, I knew when I hit the mark on that session, if I did 10 straight, because all my 50s would be sub 7 and all my 100s would be sub 14. So I'd be 13s and 6s, 6 something, 13 something. Then my body would get the adaptation it needs to translate to 400 meter run. But if I took, say, Mike Lynch down to do that, classic example, where there's no way he's getting out sub 7s and 13s. As good as an athlete as he is and as fit as he is, he's going to fail it. His hamstrings are going to lock up. And
he has done the session though. I recall he did the session with us.
But the speed's going to kill him.
Yeah, sure.
And then you ask yourself, well, if you can't do the speed to get the adaptation for the time we want for 400, do you change the session or do you change the speed and push the rep and give him more reps? So keep the metric of time, rest the same, and give him more volume, which you'll love, by the way. The more volume he gets, the more he'll love. The more volume I get, the more I'm going to hate it.
100%. And that's exactly what I'm saying. That, and even to the 10K runner that is trying to improve their 800 meter interval time, they could use that session and just do more volume. They could probably go up to 20 reps, but they're obviously slowing them down. Yeah. They're probably running 8 or 9 second 50s and a 15 or 16 second 100.
Yeah. And then you probably get the adaptation you'll need for, say, running a better 8, but it'll give you nothing in your 4.
Yeah, 100%. But I'm saying this is, unless you've run a lot of track, and this is the interesting thing about some of these guys that I'm coming across online that are doing a lot of, mileage out the roads, but they don't have a lot of track experience, but they want to improve their speed. There's a lot of guys saying online now, their biggest improvement in their endurance, once they hit that sort of a cap, and there's a marathon guys, have come from doing, they call them strides, we call them run-throughs, but at the end of their running sessions, they go out and run 10Ks, let's say, in the morning. At the end of it, they do 20 strides. They do 20 run-throughs at the end of the session to get the speed back into their legs, because they're so used to their body. And I'm finding the same thing at the moment. I'm in the same cadence all the time that I ran some run-throughs the other week up at Anthony's place, And it actually felt I'd also run 7Ks first. It felt quite challenging. Just the whole muscular sort of sequencing actually felt a little bit weird. One, I was also fatigued. I'd driven in the car the day before for 5 hours, so everything was kind of against me. But yeah, anyway, I think some of these sessions, they can all be adapted to different people. You do have to have a level of understanding of how to adapt that session to your running. I mean, I've given the 10-100 session to a few people online to go out and try. Again, they don't know what speed they're going to run because they are these distance runners coming down wanting to get more track speed because they want to start playing around and running 8s and 15s on the track. So, yeah.
Well, that 10-100 session, I give that to 8:15 guys, but not off a minute, off turnarounds. Like we call them turnarounds. So they run through and literally take 20 meters to stop. They literally turn back around, walk back to the line, go. But the speed's out. Okay. So, because I want the speed out, they can't do it. They can't do it. Sure. So you've got to so what metric do you change to get an adaptation that'll translate to 8? Well, you've got to change the reps.
Yeah. Although I have done that session 2x10.
Yes.
2x10-100s with Mike Lynch. Again, I got to probably the second set of 6 and then Mike just started to pull away from me.
Of course.
And we only ran them off a minute, but we ran them all under 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And I would say that is the perfect session. I mean, I would like to go out and do that again for myself now to keep my legs just turning over at that, 400, that 60-second 400 pace, doing 2x10-100s at 15 seconds. That's a tough run off a minute.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, there's lots of ways to break the, there's only 3 variables in these sessions. There's the rest period, the distance, and the speed.
Yeah.
So,
the variables you muck around with. And the variables depend on your athlete.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the great thing about it. You can just take these really simple sessions, right, and just adapt them to any athlete just by playing around those 3 variables. It's a fun part of coaching.
Yeah. And the only time that becomes challenging is if you're looking for a specific adaptation and your athlete doesn't possess the qualities to deliver.
Sure.
That's when it gets interesting. Like you can sort of say, well, I need X, but I'm getting Y. So what? So something's wrong. And I've actually said this to other people where I've said, listen, I know you think 400 meter runners is really exciting and you want to be one, but it's just not going to happen for you.
Yeah.
It's not the type of runner you are. You just can't, we're flogging a dead horse. And you've got to be willing to have those conversations. I mean, and then I say to people, if you're happy running 70-second 400, knock yourself out. But if that's where you think that's good and that's where you want to be, go knock yourself out. But that's not going to get you in. If you're telling me you want to be a competitive 400 meter runner, that's not going to cut it. And sometimes we've got to go to that place, and we have to do this with this kid with the 8. We're saying, 202, 204, even if you get to 2 minutes, it's not good enough.
No.
Everyone's now running 154s in your age group.
Yeah.
So, you can roll around in 2 minutes where all the cows come home and just never get out of a heat. That's your boggle. Or you make the odd final and get thrashed by 100 meters. So, whatever. So who cares? So you just got to make a decision at some point to say, well, and as we always say, you don't pick your event picks you.
Yeah, it does majority of the time, unfortunately.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you can bitch and whinge all you like, but I do, and say, I wish I was a better sprinter and not good at 400 because the training is hideous.
Yeah.
But like you say, your event picks you, and if that's where you end up, well, bad luck. You're a forerunner.
Yeah, I'm doing that horrible grind work at the moment, thinking, God, I don't remember running distance this hard.
Yeah.
Every week I think I'm going to turn the corner, and every week it doesn't come. But anyway, I keep chipping away. Well, we'll leave it there, and I think next time, we'll bring up a program. We'll just go through some steps of your program as well. I might even pull up a couple of old programs, and we'll just talk through those.
Yep.
So people can actually see what's going on.
Yeah, that's
all right. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. All right. See you later.